This conference will now be recorded.
వెయిట్ చేయాలా అందరూ వస్తారా చూసి Okay, I hope you are able to listen to me. We will wait for a minute so that everyone joins.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we shall start. I've already given you the PPT in your group. Yeah, so good morning everyone. Today I'm going to discuss on tuberculosis of bones and joints. So coming to history, Robert Koch discovered Mycobacterium tuberculosis in 1882 and Percival Pott described presentation of spinal tuberculosis in 1779. So we'll get to know about the spine and hip tuberculosis, but first we'll listen to the basics. Tuberculosis of bones and joints. Tuberculosis is still a common infection in developing countries. After lung and lymph nodes, bone and joint is the next common site. First being the lungs, second being the lymph nodes. Out of bone and joint TB, the spine is the commonest site, and out of all cases of tuberculosis, only 1 to 4% are bone and joint tuberculosis. The spine is the most common part affected among the bones and joints, which is 42%. Hip is the next common site. So those are the two common questions you might get, and sometimes the knee. So we'll concentrate on the first basics of tuberculosis, pathology, etiopathogenesis, the predisposing factors, and then we'll go to the specific pathologies. So in the long bone, it is called tuberculous osteomyelitis, where tibia is commonly affected. In short bones like phalanges, the small bones of the hand, we call them as tubercular dactylitis, also called spina ventosa. In spine, it is called TV spondylitis, also called Pott's disease. In the joint, if the tuberculous infection occurs in the joint, it is called arthritis, and most common joint is hip joint. Also, synovial tuberculosis can occur, more common in the knee. So these are only so that you get familiar with the terms. TB synovitis, tenosynovitis of the flexor tendons of the wrist is called the compound palmar ganglia. The causative organism of tuberculosis, you all know, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Hematogenous dissemination from primary focus, it could be the lung or lymph node. Usually bone and joint tuberculosis develop generally 2 to 3 years after primary focus, probably due to cell-mediated immunity. The tuberculous bacilli are phagocytosed by mononuclear cells, and epithelioid cell formation occurs. These epithelioid cells, they fuse in after caseation of the caseation necrosis, and the fusion of the epithelioid cells form the Langerhans type of giant cell. Lymphocytes form a ring around the lesion, and tubercle is formed. So central caseous necrosis, which is formed by the epithelioid cells and Langerhans giant cells. Langerhans giant cells are nothing but fusion of the epithelioid cells surrounding lymphocytes, and that is the characteristic pathology of tuberculosis. And presence of caseation necrosis is almost diagnostic of tuberculosis. Coming to predisposing factors, malnutrition, poor sanitation, living in crowded areas, close contact with tuberculosis patients, repeated pregnancies, exanthemus fevers, and immunodeficiency states. So wherever there is decrease in immunity, because the organism is in the environment, so the person can get infected with Mycobacterium tuberculosis. The clinical features are, most commonly they'll have weakness, that is malaise, loss of weight, loss of appetite. It is significant, more than 10% in 3 months. Night sweats, evening rise of temperature. Specific features to the joint are, usually patient will have pains, night pains, because after a full day of work, in the night when the muscles are relaxed, the pain increases during the night. And there is stiffness of the joints, deformity if it is a long duration, and restricted range of motion. Enlarged lymph nodes, surrounding lymph nodes can be affected after the bone or joint is affected, and formation of cold abscess. We'll go in detail about that. And neurological deficit, if there is a nerve beside the affected region, or if there is a spinal tuberculosis, it can cause compression to the nerve roots or the spinal cord. Routinely, we do X-ray of the affected part and X-ray of the chest to look out for the primary in the lung. Routine blood tests, hemoglobin, total count, differential count, ESR are necessary. Sputum examination, synovial fluid analysis. If there is a joint involvement, say tuberculosis of the knee joint with synovial effusion, you can send synovial fluid for analysis. Montu test or tuberculin test, you all know. Another form is guinea pig inoculation, but it takes time, around 2 to 3 months, for the test to become positive or to show signs in the guinea pig. So it is seldomly used. Smear and culture are being done. Isotopes scintigraphy, serological investigations and interferon, and imaging. Imaging is one investigation where you can, before you intervene, you can document the disease process and also know the extent of the disease process. Where MRI is the gold standard for bone and joint tuberculosis, you can also do an ultrasound to see any viscera are being affected. For example, you can have an ileocecal tuberculosis as a primary, so you need to confirm with ultrasound or a CT. And if bone is involved, CT shows better delineation of destruction of the bone. There are newer tests now, RT-PCR and CBNAT. CBNAT, you can give any sample like synovial fluid or blood or sputum, and it is a type of nucleic acid amplification test. It is a cartridge based. The advantage with CBNAT is you can diagnose tuberculosis from the sample, and also you can test for rifampicin resistance. So if there is a first case, you have a resistance to rifampicin, so you can go for second line of drugs, or drug resistant tuberculosis management can be done. So coming to management, you can the basic overview is you have to give support to the patient's nutrition, so that is general treatment. Care of the affected part, whatever part is affected, spine or hip, you should give specific care for that. We'll go through the details. Role of steroids, sometimes inflammatory phase can be reduced, but it is a little bit controversial to use steroids, as steroids can increase the risk of secondary infections. But sparingly used, you can decrease the inflammation in say spinal cord injury or a nerve compression. That's only temporary. Then chemotherapy, you all know, anti-tubercular treatment, the RNTCP guidelines, and middle path regime is usually we manage in spinal tuberculosis. We'll go through that. And local treatment and role of surgery, it depends on the part involved. We'll go in detail. And operative interventions when necessary. So only operative is not sufficient. You give anti-tubercular. If needed, you go for surgery and some indications are there. So you all know rifampicin, isoniazid, streptomycin, pyrazinamide, ethambutol, cycloserine, ethianamide, paraaminosalicylate acid. So bactericidal and bacteriostatic. So what surgeries or what operative intervention do we do in bone joint tuberculosis? We can perform a biopsy to see the pathology, that caseation necrosis, epithelioid formation, Langerhans cells, and biopsy can be done as a OP procedure, or you can do a CT guided biopsy, or you can do biopsy under anesthesia. Treatment of cold abscess can be done by evacuating the cold abscess with incision and drainage. Curettage of the lesion, if there is any lesion in the bone, say Brodie's abscess, you can remove, curate the lesion out. Joint debridement, suppose there are loose bodies and there is synovitis, you can do a synovectomy and also a joint debridement where you remove the necrotic part of the diseased tissue. Arthrodesis is surgical fusion of the joints when the infection is flaring up and you cannot save the joint. Then it is better to do an arthrodesis, as you can give the patient a painless stiff joint. That is, you create a fusion between the two bones, like a knee arthrodesis. Joint replacement is very rarely done. Usually the current guidelines are you should have, the patient should be on ATT and should be symptom free for about 2 years. It's better to do a joint replacement after 2 years, not before that, because you can put in implants, say hip or knee, and then if there is reactivation of the tuberculosis, then it's a bigger problem than the tuberculosis itself. So then you have to remove the implants, and then you cannot salvage. The infection gets worse, and the implant acts as a surface where infection grows. So it forms a biofilm and all that. So joint replacement is the last or a no option. But if you want to do a joint replacement, or if you suggest a joint replacement in a tuberculosis of the joint, say knee or hip, it's better to at least wait for 2 years symptom free, then do a joint replacement. So decompression, yes, most common in spinal tuberculosis, where there may be a cold abscess or a bone tuberculosis in the spine and the parts of the spine which can pressurize on the spinal cord or nerve roots. So then you have to do a decompression. Osteotomy, very rare. If there is a deformity, then you can do an osteotomy to correct it. Amputation is also very rare, because we have nice treatments and better diagnostic modalities. So amputation is a little rare, but you can have dactylitis, and which is not responding to treatment, and then you can do an amputation of the ray, that is one first metatarsal or whatever metacarpal. So coming to specific tuberculosis of the spine. The spine is the most common site for skeletal tuberculosis. 50% of all musculoskeletal tuberculosis. There are around 2 million cases worldwide. Dorsal spine is most commonly involved. So you have cervical, thoracic, lumbar and sacral. So in which the thoracic dorsal spine is the most common site of spinal tuberculosis. It is more common in the first 3 decades, and as I already mentioned about the predisposing factors, you all know: decreased immunity, decreased nutrition, Yes. So what is peculiarity in the thoracic vertebra? Second to eighth vertebra are typical, and the other 5 are atypical. So we can identify the thoracic vertebra by facets, costal facets, which give attachment to the ribs posteriorly. So blood supply is important because there is venous drainage. It can the spread of the tuberculosis can occur from the primary focus, that is the lung or lymph node, into the spine via the Batson's plexus of prevertebral Batson's plexus of veins, and there are spinal arteries, and not so it may be difficult to remember, but if you remember, spinal arteries can also be get occluded by either a thrombus in the artery or from external pressure. So you can have a cold abscess in the vertebra, and that can block the blood supply to the spinal cord. So that is why blood supply is important. So coming to pathogenesis, this is important. These 4-5 slides are very important. First, what happens is the bacilli from primary focus, say lung, through the bloodstream via the Batson's vertebral plexus, they reach the disc space. Usually, the arterial supply and venous drainage is around the disc and adjacent end plates. So one artery will supply adjacent end plates of the vertebra, lower half of upper vertebra and upper half of lower vertebra, along with the intervertebral disc. So here you can see on your right side, the infected disc is denoted in red color. So once the bacilli enters the disc, it gets infected, the disc gets infected, and soft nucleus center and fibrous annular wall, they weaken and they lead to decay and collapse. So you can see a decrease in the intervertebral space. So you can pick that up even in X-ray, where you see decreased intervertebral disc space. So what happens? This causes the disc space to narrow, squeezing down on the nerve root, causing pain. So if patient can have a radiating pain in the distribution of the nerve root. So the pinched nerve root is depicted as a red color, where you can correlate the disc space is decreased and the nerve root is getting pinched. Next, the infection spreads to the vertebral bodies above and below the disc. So you can see vertebral bodies get affected, and this leads to weakening of the bones, and the weight of the patient will make the vertebra collapse on each other. So that will lead to deformity and also neurological problems. So this deformed spinal column compresses the spinal cord, producing functional impairment. You all know your upper motor neuron lesion, lower motor neuron lesion. So the vertebral bodies can compress on the cord. At that level, you get a lower motor neuron lesion, and below that level, you get a upper motor neuron type of a lesion. So over time, the deformed vertebrae heal and fuse. So you get a deformity, and it may again compress the nerve roots, causing more neurological deficit. So there are 4 types of vertebral affections. As you can see in image 1, it is paradiscal, which is most common type. It is due to arterial spread. Then you have central due to venous spread. Anterior is due to subperiosteal spread, and appendiceal is the parts of the vertebra like posterior elements like the spine and the facet joints. They get affected. So most common is paradiscal, central, anterior, and then appendiceal. So due to inflammation, there is hyperemia, and which will cause osteoporosis, and the disease itself will destroy the bone, and also you can have an ischemic necrosis due to inflammation of the blood vessels supplying to the vertebra, which will lead to destruction of the vertebra, collapse and deformity. So you have to know infection of the tuberculosis infection of the spine will cause destruction of vertebra and deformity. Pathogenesis of cold abscess. It is formed by collection of the products of liquefaction and reactive exudation. It is composed mainly of serum, leukocytes, caseous material, bone debris, and TB bacilli. Tracks away along neighboring vessels and nerves to reach the surface, and it may burst to form a sinus. It is called cold abscess because it doesn't show any signs of like a pyogenic abscess. There is no fever. So patients' cell-mediated immunity can mask these features. So we have to pick up early. So as I told you, dorsal spine is the most common affected. You can have paraplegia because of destruction of the bone. It can cause damage to the spinal cord. So spinal cord can be damaged early or late. Early onset paraplegia is within 2 years. It could be due to inflammatory edema of the cord, granulation tissue, caseous tissue, and rarely ischemic lesion of the cord. As I told you, the blood supply to the spinal cord also can be disrupted. Most common is the caseation tissue, cold abscess, granulation tissue obstructing on the spinal canal, causing compression of the cord. Paraplegia is the weakness of both lower limbs. Late onset paraplegia is recrudescence of the disease or mechanical compression of the cord. So if the patient is on irregular treatment, sometimes until he takes the drugs, it will be okay. And when he stops the drugs or the reactivation of the infection occurs, and you have more and more damage of the vertebral bodies, you can have a delayed onset of paraplegia. So other differential diagnoses are pyogenic infections, where disc space collapse is typical of infection. We can also see in tuberculosis. Malignant disease, disc space preservation is typical of metastatic disease. So if you have bony pain and if you see a lesion in the MRI, so we probably think of malignancy if the disc space is intact. So the most important radiological picture is decrease in joint space favors tuberculosis. If this disc space is preserved, then it is probably a secondary from a tumor. So this is also an important entrance bit where they will ask you difference between malignancy and spinal tuberculosis. So the thing is, intervertebral disc space is preserved in malignancy. So plain radiographs of dorsal spine, as you can see, where I mentioned D10 and D11, there is decrease in disc space. So that is clearly seen in MRI. Here you can see an anterior type of a lesion and the decreased space between D10 and D11, and you have altered densities in the vertebral bodies. And you can also see a cold abscess from the posterior side pressing onto the spinal cord. So you have a white on your right sided image, that is T2 weighted image. T2 weighted image, you have CSF in white color. So the CSF column is anterior and posterior to the spinal cord, where you can see the spinal CSF is not clearly seen around the cord in the D10 and D11 region. So management, you all know, first the regular blood investigations, ESR is raised, Montu test should be done, though non-specific, but it says the patient is inactive. And TB ELISA, usually the IgM titer is active in early stages, and you all know about the new testing methods like CBNet. So the objectives of treatment of spinal tuberculosis, you have to eradicate or arrest the disease, and if there is a deformity, you have to correct it, or if there is no deformity, you have to prevent it, and also any major complication like paraplegia. So the most important point here is if there is no deficit, you have to look out for any progressive neurological deficit. So if the patient has no neurological symptoms like weakness of the lower limbs, and then you ask for symptoms like weakness of the lower limbs, it can occur through time. So we want to prevent that. Supportive treatment in spinal tuberculosis is rest, braces, high protein diet, multivitamins, hygiene, bed sore care, because most of them are bedridden, so you need to take care of the bed sores to prevent them or treat them, and urinary tract care, chest physiotherapy, and we have to improve the immune status of the patient and treat also the comorbid conditions like diabetes. So non-neurological cases of spinal tuberculosis, where you find a lesion in the spinal elements like the vertebral bodies or the posterior aspect of the spine, but there is no nerve deficit. So the spinal cord and nerves are normal. Then you can go with conservative treatment and rest. Middle path regimen is where you give a conservative treatment and you look out for progressive neurological deficit. If there is a deficit, then you perform a surgery. So middle path regimen is between both. It is not only conservative, but if required, it can be, patient can be shifted for surgery. So these are the doses of drugs, you all know. So the treatment is HRZE for first 6 months and HR for 12 months. So main thing, the take home message or the basic important point here is you need to treat the tuberculosis of the bone and joint for at least 12 to 18 months. So they require a long duration of treatment, and they require a daily dose of anti-tubercular drug, not the alternate day. So the RNCP guidelines have changed, and you give a daily dose. And the newer drugs, you all know, amikacin, kanamycin, ciprofloxacin, ofloxacin. So second line drugs and newer drugs. So when do you operate? So if there is an abscess and it can be readily drained, then you need to operate in the spine. For advanced disease and marked destruction of bone, and if there is any deformity, you have to operate. And if there is neurological deficit including paraparesis that has not responded to drug therapy, so that is the middle path regime. Where there is paraplegia, you give rest and you give conservative treatment, and you go for surgery because the neurological deficit is increasing. Surgical options include only decompression, where you decompress, remove the cold abscess. You do a decompression and anterior interbody fusion, that we go through the abdomen and then anteriorly you can fix. Usually it is done in cervical region. So you, in the cervical region, you go anteriorly through the neck and then remove the cold abscess, remove the disc material which is diseased, and you fill it with bone graft and put a plate. So that is interbody fusion anteriorly. You can do a global fusion, that is anterior and posterior fusion, mostly done in cervical spine, and transpedicular decompression and global fusion usually done in lumbar spine and thoracic spine. So through the pedicles, like a discectomy, you go in, you remove the disc and the adjacent cold abscess, and then you can perform a fusion. That is, you can put a I'll show you the x-rays. You can put implants so that you can. So for dorsal spine, we do an extrapleural anterolateral resection. Here you can see in the first image part of the costal facet and the part of the rib is removed to drain the cold abscess, or through the lung you can do, or so you can do a cervical anterior approach to remove the cold abscess, or you can do a posterior posterolateral approach. Here you can see a D10, D12 decreased space in the intervertebral disc space fixed with posterior instrumentation. So we remove the diseased tissue and then we stabilize the spine posteriorly. So these are rods which are connected to pedicle screws. So there is a part known as pedicle through which the screws, usually titanium screws, are used so that you can take an MRI after the surgery. So these are posterior instrumentation and fusion of a dorsal spine tuberculosis. So main thing is you have to eradicate the disease and then you do a stabilization with the instrumentation. So coming to tuberculosis of the hip, you all know hip is a ball and socket joint. It has a labrum and also a thick ligaments. Iliofemoral ligament is a Y-shaped ligament which is the strongest ligament of the body. So in hip, you have acetabular. The most common site of tuberculosis of the hip is acetabular roof, epiphysis, metaphyseal region, greater trochanter, and synovium. Here, even small children in teenage can also get affected due to malnutrition. So what happens is there is an upper end of femur, or the acetabular roof is affected and involves the joint. So it destroys the articular surface and head of the acetabulum. So there are lesions in the roof of the acetabulum. So cold abscess can form within the joint and makes the capsule weak, and it can track down to either thigh, inguinal region, or ischiorectal fossa. So if the disease of the hip is prolonged, or there is a chronic duration of the disease, and it can lead to wandering acetabulum, and if left untreated, it can lead to absorption of the capsule and deformity of the head, and it can cause fibrous ankylosis of the joint. So same, you can have constitutional symptoms because the hip is infected. Usually pain will be in the hip region and more at the night times. Deformity, we'll discuss about the stages of the hip arthritis. And if there is a cold abscess, patient will have fullness of the anterior aspect of the thigh. So you'll have generalized weakness, gait is antalgic, Trendelenburg, and there is wasting of thigh and gluteal muscles. There is decreased range of motion, and there may be true shortening if there is bone destruction, and due to deformity, there can be apparent lengthening or shortening. So coming to this is important. As we discussed stages in the spine, there are stages in the arthritis of the hip or knee, whichever joint tuberculosis question is given, you have to mention these stages. Stage 1 is synovitis, stage 2 is early arthritis, advanced arthritis, and subluxation or dislocation. So coming to stage of synovitis, where stage of synovitis is where there is effusion into the joint, and the attitude of the limb is flexion, abduction, and external rotation. At the hip, there is flexion, abduction, and external rotation. So this is the stage of apparent lengthening. Next, early arthritis, where articular cartilage is involved and it leads to spasm of the flexors and adductors. So what happens? because there is decreased joint space, there is apparent shortening. So the attitude is flexion, adduction, internal rotation. Like your posterior dislocation of hip, FADIR, F-A-D-I-R. F is flexion, AD is adduction, IR is internal rotation. So that is stage 2. Stage 1 is Faber, F-A-B-E-R, flexion, AB is abduction, ER is external rotation. Faber is stage 1 synovitis. FADIR is flexion, adduction, and internal rotation in early arthritis. There is shortening in second stage. Third stage is stage of erosion or advanced arthritis, where the cartilage surface and bone is also involved. And there is flexion, adduction, internal rotation as in the previous. And this is a stage of real shortening. Okay, because there is destruction of bone, you have more shortening, that is real shortening. And next you can have subluxation, where part of the articular surface is out of the joint, or you can have a complete dislocation. So these are the 4 stages. So usually we take an X-ray first and then an MRI of the hip. So early arthritis, as I told you, there is increased joint space, so apparent lengthening. In stage 2, decreased joint space and apparent shortening. Stage 3, arthritis, where you have destruction of the articular cartilage and you have real shortening, and you can have widened acetabulum and break in the Shenton's line. In advanced arthritis, you can have complete destruction of the joint, and there is ankylosis. In all tuberculous affections of the joint, you have fibrous ankylosis. So the only place where you get bony ankylosis is spine and fingers, that is dactylitis. So here you can see an MRI where you have synovial fluid in the left side. There is right side on your image, but that is the left side of the patient. So you have hyperintensity. In T2-weighted images, all fluids and all water are shown as bright white color. You can see urine in the urinary bladder is white, and the edema and synovial fluid and exudates are white in the around the hip joint. So management is same investigations you do as told earlier, and treatment are physical, medical, and surgical methods. Physical methods are bed rest, and you can give skin traction in the early stage so that the muscle spasm is reduced, and you allow active range of motion with traction. And you can also give traction and abduction in pediatric hips, and plaster application again in pediatric hips, where you abduct the hip and apply a plaster. Some other general methods: high protein diet, anti-tubercular drugs, and according to RNTCP guidelines. And you all know first line, second line drugs we have already discussed. So non-extrapulmonary tuberculosis are spinal tuberculosis with neurological complications and bone and joints. So that we have discussed in the hip. So I told you daily regimen is important, and you have to give minimum around 6 to 9 months is necessary, but may need up to 12 to 18 months of medical treatment. So surgical methods in the hip are: you can do a synovectomy, joint debridement, arthrodesis. Arthroplasty is not to be advocated within 2 years. And then synovectomy, hypertrophied synovium is removed and sent for biopsy. Joint debridement, as I told you, the necrotic parts of the femoral head and acetabulum are removed, and loose bodies of articular cartilage sequester granulation tissue within the joint. So arthrodesis is surgical fusion. So if you want to fuse the hip joint, because there is disease process, you can leave the debridement. After debridement, it is easy to perform a ischio-femoral arthrodesis, where you see ischium and subtrochanteric region of femur are fused. as you see in the X-ray. Excision arthroplasty is removal of head and neck. You can remove the head of the neck of the femur. And arthroplasty, as I told you, it's little less advisable, but if you have to do, you can do a cemented arthroplasty of the hip, where you have acetabular component and the hip component. Thank you. Oops, sorry. That's the first page.